Hey guys, welcome back. In this segment on corridors, Kasey's going to show us how to create intersections. This one I understand can be a little bit confusing and a little bit complicated, so pay special attention as he shows us how to get this done and create intersections and join together multiple corridors. Let's learn.
Welcome back everyone, this is Kasey. Today we're going to be going over how to create intersections within your corridors in Civil 3D. So this is a really complex process and it can sometimes spit out really weird outputs, but if you just bear with me, we'll try and work through it. So as you can see here, we have our corridor that has a bunch of different regions. It has all of our cul-de-sacs and whatnot put in, as well as intersections at this T and as well as at this T, but we're missing this middle four-way intersection here. So I picked this intersection to show off just because the four-way intersections tend to be a little bit more complex than the three-way or T intersections. So we're just going to go ahead and start off the process. We're going to go ahead and we're going to select intersections and create intersection. Right, and then we're going to select the intersection point, which I have, as you can see with this blue dashed line here, I've got the center lines of both this main road as well as this other road crossing. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the intersection point of those two center lines. Okay, and then it's going to ask you to select the main road alignment, or you can hit enter and select from the list. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit enter, and this is going to show the name of both of our alignments for our roads. So Tabasco Trace here is this road that's running from left to right, and then Wasabi Way is running from north to south. Both of these roads have the same lane width. They've got the same curb and gutter. They're essentially the exact same as far as the specifications of the road go. But if you ever have an instance in which you might have one road has larger lane widths or has sidewalk and another road doesn't have sidewalk or something, you're going to want to select the larger road as your main road here. But Tabasco Trace here that runs from left to right is the longest road on our site, so I'm just going to go ahead and select that as the main road. And then it's going to go ahead and populate this box here to create our intersection. So I like to name our intersections just the name of each road, with the main road as the first road and then the secondary road as the second road. I haven't really found any sort of naming convention that's required to make more sense of some later process yet, so this is the way that I've been naming them for now, but this is not set in stone. If you find a better way to name your intersections, feel free to do so. Okay, the intersection marker style, we don't have a style for this, so standard is the only option you're going to have here, and then the marker layer, you can just leave on 0 for now, but you are going to want to put that on a no plot layer because it will show a large marker at the intersection point, which we don't want to show on our sheets, obviously. The intersection label style, we're just going to leave a standard. That's also our only option. And then this drop down here is the most important part of this first, general properties tab here, and that's basically going to determine whether or not the main road crown is the only crown that's maintained at the intersection, or if both road crowns are maintained, right? So most of the roads that we're going to do, we're going to have all crowns maintained, at least for the sake of this project, where we have two roads that are exactly the same width and have exactly the same curb gutter, lack of sidewalk, and all the specifications are exactly the same. We're going to have all of our crowns maintained. Okay, but this is a pretty vital option, and it shows you this little preview here that you can take a look at and kind of understand exactly what that means. So we're just going to go ahead and select all crowns maintained, and then we'll go ahead and hit next. Okay, here it's going to show your intersecting alignments. It's going to show you the alignment of the main road as well as the alignment of the secondary road. One key thing that you need to know is this will show any and all alignments that pass through that specific intersection point that we selected, which is this guy right here. Okay, so if you have a storm alignment, if you have a sewer alignment, if your sewer runs right through the center of the road, which is something that's pretty common, it's going to show the sewer alignment here on this table, and we do not want that. Okay, so ideally you're going to make your corridor and your intersections before you make your utilities, including your sewer. So one of the tricky things that might happen if you have a sewer alignment, for example, running through that intersection point, is it's going to show up on this table, okay, and it's going to ask you to put it, give it or assign it a priority, right? So obviously your sewer, in the case of your road intersection, is the lowest priority because it's not relevant. Well, if you have that third sewer alignment, you're not going to be able to access any of these options here at the bottom, these lane slope parameters and curb return profile parameters, because most likely you won't have created a vertical profile for your sewer yet. Okay, if you haven't created a vertical profile for your sewer yet, which we don't ever create a proposed vertical profile for our sewer. We create a profile view which shows our sewer compared to the existing and proposed grades, but we don't ever create a proposed profile for the sewer itself. You won't be able to access these key options, and you won't be able to access some of the key options here on the next tab as well. So you want to make sure that you do not have some sort of utility alignment also running through that intersection point, or it will mess up this window here. So that's very, very key. Okay, once you move on to geometry details, you're going to want to assign the priority of your alignments with your main alignment as priority 1 and your secondary alignment for your secondary road as priority 2. So these are already set up the way that we want them, and you can change the priority using these little arrows here. I can select one and move it up, etc. as such. So we want our main road that runs from left to right, which is Tabasco Trace here, as priority 1. Okay, you're going to leave all of these boxes checked here, and we'll just go ahead and run through each one of these different windows one by one. Offset parameters here is going to specify essentially the lane widths at your intersection. So both of these roads here are designed to have lane widths of 10.5 feet. So we're just going to go and we're going to select 10.5 feet for right and left for both of these roads, and as you can see, it's selecting the baseline here of the corridor that this road is running along, and then it also gives you this little preview down here, which is quite useful. Okay, we can just go ahead and press OK. Usually we're only going to change the offset value, which is the lane width, right? So it's offsetting from the baseline, which is the center line of the road. So this guy here, right offset alignment definition, is going to offset to the right from our baseline, 10.5 feet, which is our lane width. Okay, and then you're not going to have to change any of the alignment name formats or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and press OK. We'll go to curb return parameters, and this is going to specify the radius of the turns at each of your quadrants of your intersection here. So it's going to break up your four-way intersection into 4 quadrants. You're going to have the northeast, northwest, southeast, and southwest quadrants. And they're going to be named here, so you can select any one of them, or you can hit next to scroll through them, and it's going to give you this little arc preview here. So I know because I created the intersection here that these curbs here are to be 20-foot radius. So the radius for the curb return parameters is going to be 20 feet for all 4 quadrants. So this quadrant, this quadrant, this quadrant, and this quadrant. So I'm going to go ahead and hit 20 into each of them, hit next, punch in 20. 20, 20. And as you can see, when I change the radius, this little preview here isn't going to change in size. This is not showing the actual radius. Rather, it's just showing you which quadrant you're currently working in. You'll also get some information about the intersection quadrant itself. It'll give you the quadrant angle and whatnot, which you can see is quite accurate. Here we've got an angle of 95 degrees here on this kind of obtuse turn here, just because this intersection isn't exactly perpendicular. So it'll give you that angle there. Go ahead and press OK. Then we'll move to lane slope parameters. This is going to specify the cross slope in each lane, which typically we're going to have at 2%. So all of these values at 2% look perfectly good. It's going to show you this little preview here. As you can see, it's the cross slope across the lane in percentage. If you look really closely here. So we're just going to leave all that the same, press OK. If you'd like to have a different cross slope in your lane, you can change it. Or if, on one portion of the intersection, you want the slope from, the farthest left side of your road all the way to the farthest right side of the road be continuous, so that all the water drains to one side of the road versus the other, then you might change one of these 2% from a negative to a positive value, but we're not going to touch any of that for now. And then your curb return profile parameters, we can go ahead and take a look at here. What this is going to do is it's going to ask you if you're going to want to extend the curb return along the length of the incoming lane. So as you can see here, this is essentially what it's showing here. It's showing, do you want to extend this length that's in blue right here, and do you want to do it along the profile as well, right? So it's extend profile, okay, along incoming lane, extend profile along outgoing lane, and it's going to ask you the length that you want to extend the profile. Okay, so once again, just take a look at these blue lines here, and you can punch in the length that you want to have it extend. 25 feet is fine for me, so we're not going to change any of those values there. And you can also turn off that setting if you just change this box here from yes to no. So that all looks good. We're going to go ahead and we're going to hit next. And then in this corridor regions portion of our settings here, we're going to have some of the most important settings. Okay, so what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a corridor in the intersection area, and we're going to want to add this to an existing corridor. Okay, if we select create new corridor, it's going to create a brand new corridor here at this intersection, which we don't want. We want this intersection to tie into the existing corridor, which is surrounding. So I'm going to go ahead and select add to an existing corridor, and I'm going to select the corridor which is already created, which is named site corridor. Okay, and then I'm going to select the surface to daylight. We want to daylight to our existing grade in pretty much all conditions. When we design a corridor, we're going to be designing our daylights to daylight to the existing grade. So we're going to go ahead and select the EG surface. Okay, and then this box right here is going to ask you what assemblies you want to apply to each region that this corridor is going to generate. Okay, so if none of these assemblies here, obviously before you create any intersections, all of these assemblies here are going to populate here in this box, but you haven't created any of these assemblies. So these are like standardized assemblies in AutoCAD or in Civil 3D, and once you create your intersection, these are going to populate automatically in your file. Okay, so you might have to edit these assemblies to get the output that you want, or you might have to create your own assemblies in which you can select any of the assemblies that you've created that are already within the file. You can select, but typically in my experience from doing these intersections thus far, all of these assemblies that it's going to import are usually pretty close to working the way that you're going to want, but you might have to edit them to be specific to your project. So you might have to edit the widths, you might have to edit the curb and gutter to be the curb and gutter that you're using. For example, we're using roll curb, not standard 2-foot curb and gutter, and I believe that these assemblies are going to generate with standard 2-foot curb and gutter, so I'll have to replace that standard curb and gutter subassembly with the subassembly for roll curb that we've created. But most of these are going to be what you want. The only ones that you're going to want to change is you're going to want to change your primary road full section to the assembly that you used for the road on the corridor. So I made an assembly in which I named main road, and that's the assembly that I used for creating the corridor initially before I made the intersection. So I'm going to go ahead and select primary road full section and secondary road full section. I'm going to set these as that assembly, and then the rest of them I'm going to leave as these ones that are going to get auto imported. So I can go ahead and select create intersection, and then it's going to take a minute and it's going to populate the rest of the corridor here. So we'll just give it a second. Okay, so one of the things that it's going to do is it's going to generate all of these labels. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all these labels, and the reason that it generates a bunch of labels is because it's actually creating alignments along each quadrant of your intersection. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all these because we don't really need them. We don't want to show them. So just give me just a second to get rid of all of these. And then obviously you don't want, these alignments are crucial, so with the arrows here, so you don't want to delete the alignments themselves, so be careful not to select those and delete them. Okay, so these arrows here, these alignments, as you can see, that run along the curve here, each one of these alignments is going to be referenced by a region of the corridor that's generated. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rebuild the corridor itself. And then as you can see, it's going to populate the intersection here. So a lot of these regions are basically referring to these alignments. So you want to be sure not to delete any of these alignments that are generated when you create your intersection. The next thing you're going to want to do to fix your intersection, because obviously here it looks quite funky, is you're going to want to edit the targets. So if you're not familiar with corridors, our corridor is broken into a ton of little different regions. So if I go ahead and select our corridor, and then I select modify region or edit targets, or one of these buttons, just for it to give me this prompt to select a region, as you can see, there's a bunch of different regions here. So in this large, very complex corridor, we have a region for each one of these cul-de-sacs. We have a region for each section of the road, which is split by a bunch of small regions within the intersections. So the intersections can get pretty nasty, as there are a bunch of little different tiny regions that are generated, referencing all these alignments that were just created and whatnot. So it can get pretty difficult to deal with. But we're just going to go ahead and tackle it one piece at a time. So we're going to select our corridor, and we're going to select corridor properties. Okay, this corridor properties box is going to allow us to modify the targets, both for offset as well as for elevation for each one of our regions. So I'm going to drag this off to the side onto my other monitor here, so you won't be able to see it, but I will drag it back just so you can see. So on this, let's see if I can set it where we can see both. So I'm going to be selecting all of these regions here. So each region falls under a baseline. So this is why these are all called BL. I have the rest of these baselines named, but it's going to highlight the baseline in red, and then it's going to encircle the region with this little blue arrow here, and then it's going to show the alignments that region references. So these dark blue lines here are the alignments that region references, and then this light blue box encloses the region itself. So in order to, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to start. We're going to start with this primary road full section here. So we're just going to drag this pane over here, so you're not going to be able to see the section itself, but just know that we're starting with this region right here. I'm going to drag this box back over, and as you can see, this box is extremely overwhelming, but a lot of these parts of this table you're not really going to touch. The only things you might edit are the assemblies, and then the frequency, target, and then maybe some overrides. You're not really going to touch the station and the alignments, and occasionally you might change horizontal or vertical baselines, but for the most part you're only ever going to be changing the assembly and the targets here. So starting with this section here, I'll just remind you once more that this is going to be this section enclosed by the light blue box. We're going to hit this little 3-dot box right here under target, because we're going to change the targets for this area. So this is going to pull up the target mapping box, which again is a really complex and pretty scary looking box, but you can just you could just be rest assured that you're not going to be editing most of these settings, at least for the most part. So what this is going to do is it's going to break down the assembly within this region, right? So that region is going to reference an assembly. It's going to break down the assembly into each of its sub-assembly parts, and then whichever sub-assemblies have to have a target for their offset and elevation, or a target surface, it's going to allow you to change the offset, elevation, and then if you hit this little surface tab, it'll allow you to change the surface targeting. So for all of our corridors, we're going to want our target surface to be EG. So these are not going to change. They were already set to EG when we generated the intersection. If we go back to offset and elevation, this is where it gets pretty funky and pretty complicated. But for this section, just to break it down and keep it somewhat simple, our assembly is split into a left lane, a right lane, and then a daylight on each side. So it's got a link width and slope on each side that it uses for the left side as well as the right side. And we're not going to be editing these offset and elevations, which I'm selecting here. Those can stay what they are, at least for the time being. We are going to be editing the width target and outside elevation target for both of these lanes in the assembly. So what we want is we want our outside elevation target to target this alignment which was created. Okay, so this is going to be this alignment, which is going to reference the lane cross slopes that we punched in when creating our intersection. And we also want it to reference the quadrant alignment for this intersection. So this is the intersection of Tabasco Trace and Wasabi Way. So I'm just going to navigate down here. So we don't want to select any of these ones for a different intersection here. Like these is for, these alignments here are for this intersection here, so we want to ignore those. And we just want to navigate to Tabasco Trace, Wasabi Way, and then each of these quadrant profiles here. So for the left side of this box here, which is going to be it's going to be this area up here. Okay, we're going to want to select the northwest quadrant, which is going to be this quadrant profile here. It could be the southwest quadrant depending on the direction the alignment is traveling, but I'm going to assume that it's going to be the northwest quadrant, so we're going to go ahead and select that, and we're going to leave the Tabasco trace left. As you can see, we're working on the left outside elevation target, negative 2% cross slope. We're going to go ahead and navigate to the width target, and for our width target, we want essentially the exact same thing. We want Tabasco trace left, except we want the 10.5 width alignment, and then we want to navigate to our intersection alignments, which is Tabasco trace Wasabi Way, and we're going to select again that northwest quadrant. So we'll go ahead and press OK. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and navigate back to that really quick. I just noticed that I did that off screen, so I'm going to go ahead and do it one more time. I changed the outside elevation target to include both Tabasco trace left, because we're operating in the left lane here, negative 2% cross slope, which again, that references the cross slope that we entered when we created the intersection. And then I'm going to also want to select Tabasco trace Wasabi Way northwest quadrant profile, and then I can go ahead and press OK. When I'm done with this dialog box, for the width target, we're going to want to set the same thing. We want Tabasco trace left 10.5 feet. So instead of that cross slope alignment for the elevation for the offset, we want the offset alignment here, which is that 10.5 feet lane width, as well as the intersection northwest quadrant. And then for the right side, we're going to repeat that. So I don't want this alignment here, this habanero lane. I don't want that. I want Tabasco trace right negative 2%. And then for, as well as the northwest quadrant, or excuse me, that's not correct. So this is now the right side of the road in this section, right? So for the left side, it was the northwest quadrant. So for the right side, it's going to be the southwest quadrant here. So I'm going to select that cross slope alignment, and then I'm going to select in the intersection alignments here, I'm going to select the southwest. And then for the width target, I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to select that offset alignment here. So it's going to be Tabasco trace right, because again, we're working on the right lane, 10.5 feet, as well as the Tabasco trace Wasabi Way southwest quadrant. And then I'll go ahead and press OK. If I go ahead and press apply and then rebuild the corridor, and then I'm going to go ahead and close out of this guy. We'll just go ahead and rebuild the corridor once more, or once it's rebuilt. As you can see, this section that we've just edited has been updated. So we'll go ahead and review the properties for that section one more time. Again, it is this section. Let me go ahead and click so I can make sure I'm working in the right section here. It's this guy right here. Okay, and then I'm going to again go to the targets, and then our target mapping, we're going to make sure our link width and slopes are set to none for all, and then we're going to make sure our elevation has our cross slope here, as well as the correct quadrant alignment for that intersection selected. Same thing with our width, except our width is going to use an offset alignment, which is that 10.5 foot offset for our lanes, versus the cross slope, as well as the correct quadrant. So the southwest quadrant here on the left, and then it's going to be the northwest quadrant here on the right. I'll move this guy out of the way again so you can see. So on the left side of the road, it's going to be the southwest quadrant here, and then on the right side, it's going to be the northwest quadrant, etc. Okay, and then for our surface, we want our targets to be EG for all. We'll go ahead and press OK, and then when we hit apply, it's going to want to rebuild, right? And then that's going to update this, and as you can see, it's going to match the road along the rest of the length there, so it's going to be daylighting around the exact same area, which is exactly what we want. So we're going to go and we're going to repeat this process for all three other portions of the corridor. So we're going to go over that again really quickly and hopefully smoothly. So here we've got this enclosed blue section right here, which is the secondary road full section. And that's going to be the north secondary road full section. So I'm going to go ahead and edit the target. So I'm going to hit this little three dots. It's going to open up my target mapping. Our surface, we want to be EG, so that all looks right. And then for offset and elevation, again, this is where it gets really tricky. The link width and slope, and link width and slope for the left and right sides, we're going to want to have the offset and elevations be set to none. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect all of the alignments here that it's referencing for each of these four boxes for the offset and the elevation. So I'm just going to make sure these guys are set to none. Deselect these guys. And then it looks like for the right side, The alignment that it auto wants to select is the northeast quadrant. So I'm going to deselect those. So the northeast quadrant up here is going to be our right side, and the northwest quadrant here is going to be our left side. So we're going to set for our outside elevation target for our left lane, we're going to set the elevation, and again, this is the secondary road now instead of the primary. So this is going to be Wasabi Way, and we're working in the left lane, so left, -2.5%. And then we're going to want to go to the intersection alignments here. So this is the intersection of Tabasco Trace and Wasabi Way, and the left side is going to be our northwest quadrant. So we're going to select that guy, and then we're going to move to our offset. Our offset is going to be Wasabi Way 10.5 feet left, because again, we're working in the left lane here. Okay, and then we're also going to select again the northwest quadrant alignment here. And then for our right side, it's going to be the exact same thing, but just for the right side. So the outside elevation target is going to be Wasabi Way right -2.5%. And then the second alignment we're going to select here is going to be the northeast quadrant profile for Tabasco Trace and Wasabi Way. And then for our width target, it's going to be Wasabi Way right 10.5 feet. So I'm just going to look for that. Here we go, right 10.5 feet. And then we're also going to select the intersection alignment for the northeast quadrant for Tabasco Trace and Wasabi Way. We'll go ahead and press OK. And then I'm going to hit apply. So I'm going to move this guy over to the side here so that you can see. I'm going to hit apply. It's going to prompt me to rebuild the corridor. And then as you can see, it's going to update here. And now that the target mapping is selected, or excuse me, set to be the correct targets, as you can see, it's going to match up very, very closely with the corridor for the rest of the length of that road, which is exactly what we want. And then we're just going to go ahead and repeat that for these last two portions. So we have to do, I'm going to move this guy off to the side just so I can see the section that I'm working in. We're going to do the primary road full section on the right. So again, I'm going to drag this guy over so you can see. I'm going to select the targets. It's going to open up my target mapping. I want these guys to be set to none, so I'm just going to deselect all of the alignments in here. So I'm going to go ahead and take a second to do that. And last one. Okay, and then for my left and right lanes, I'm going to again want to select the correct alignments for these. So looking in this region, we're working in Tabasco Trace here and not Wasabi Way. So for Tabasco Trace, we're going to want the elevation to be Tabasco Trace. We're working in the left side, so we want Tabasco Trace left -2%. And I'm just going to go ahead and deselect whatever was there before, which is this guy. Okay, and then I want the elevation to also include the alignment for the left side is most likely going to be this southeast corner. So I'm going to select southeast quadrant here, southeast quadrant. And then for the offset, it's going to be Tabasco Trace left 10.5. And then the second alignment is going to be, again, the southeast quadrant here, Tabasco Trace Wasabi Way, which is perfect. Okay, and then for the right side, it's going to be the exact same, except it's going to be Tabasco Trace right -2.5%, whatever was selected here before, which it looks like there's duplicates of that, which is pretty normal. I think it generates two sets because there's two sides there. This is where this gets really complex and really tedious. The target mapping is the most important thing for your intersections to make sure that it comes out the way that you want. So instead of it being the southeast quadrant, it's going to be the northeast quadrant now. Okay, for the right side, and then for our widths, again, it's going to be Tabasco Trace right 10.5 feet, and then we're also going to select Tabasco Trace Wasabi Way northeast quadrant. We'll go ahead and press OK, and then I'm going to hit apply. I'm going to drag it off the way so you can see, hit apply. It's going to prompt me to rebuild the corridor, and as you can see, it's going to populate that region with updated targets that are very close to the existing road there. So now this intersection is starting to come together. All right, and then for our last one, which is going to be this bottom region here, again, go to our corridor properties, and that's going to be this region right here. So I'm going to go ahead and edit the targets. I'm going to set all of these guys to none. So I'm going to deselect all of the alignments that are selected for the link width and slope subassemblies. Okay. And the more intersections you create, the more of these alignments it's going to generate. As you can see for the intersection, if I move this over here, it generates a bunch of these alignments. It's all these white lines with the arrows here. So this box is just going to get more and more crowded. So working with intersections can be very, very tedious, but it will do a lot of grading for you, which is really, really, really helpful. And once you get the hang of it, it'll make everything a little bit quicker. Okay, so for our outside elevation target left, our left side is looks like it's going to be our southwest quadrant here. So for the elevation, we're going to select Wasabi Way left -2%, and then we're also going to select Tabasco Trace Wasabi Way southwest quadrant. Okay, and then for our offset, it's going to be Wasabi Way left 10.5 feet, and then again Wasabi Way Tabasco Trace southwest quadrant. Okay, and then for our right side, it's going to be the exact same thing, but instead of left, it's going to be right. So we're going to have Wasabi Way right -2.5%, as well as Tabasco Trace Wasabi Way. And now we're no longer in the southwest quadrant here. We're in the southeast quadrant. So I'm going to select Tabasco Trace Wasabi Way southeast. Okay, and then for the width, same thing. It's going to be Wasabi Way right 10.5 feet, and then Tabasco Trace Wasabi Way southeast quadrant. And then I can go ahead and press OK. And then I'm going to hit apply here. So I'm going to move this out the way so you can see. Hit apply. It's going to prompt me to rebuild the corridor. We'll let it rebuild. And then as you can see, it's going to match quite closely with the existing corridor here on the bottom. Okay, and then I'm going to select all of these alignments here, and I'm going to move them to a different layer. I've already created another layer in this file when I made the other intersections, tin corridor data. So I'm going to move those alignments just so you can see. This right here, if I go ahead, I'm going to freeze my corridor just so you can see. This right here is the intersection marker that we don't want to show plotted on sheets. So I'm going to move that guy to the same layer, the CZ tin corridor data layer, just so that that doesn't populate it on any of our sheets accidentally. And then I'm going to turn the corridor back on, and we can take a look at the corridor. So if I go ahead and select the corridor and then hit edit targets, just so you can see all the regions, there is a couple little weird funky regions here whenever you have an intersection that isn't exactly perpendicular. So like I referred to earlier in the video, it showed you that kind of angle, that degree angle. So on our obtuse angle turns, essentially, which is this turn here in the northeast quadrant and then this turn here in the southwest quadrant, that curb return fillet region only kind of covers like as if it was 90 degrees, and then it's going to generate this kind of weird extra section for those obtuse ones. So if you look here, there's no weird extra section when it's less than 90 degrees, but for where it's higher than 90 degrees, it's going to generate this weird extra section. You can edit the targets for this if you'd like, and edit the target mapping just to make the corridor perfect, but it typically isn't necessary. What the corridor is going to do when you generate your surface is it's going to kind of just interpolate and connect the contours here. So usually it's not really a big deal, but for the sake of perfection, you can edit and change it just like we did for these sections up here that we just did around all four parts of the intersection. The curb return fillets will also generate what's called a bow tie. So this is a bow tie here. Essentially, it has a problem in determining at what point it should target for the daylight. You can use this tool, clear corridor bow ties, in which you're going to select the alignment. So if I go ahead and turn those alignments back on, if I turn that layer back on that shows those alignments, I can select clear corridor bow ties, select this alignment, the starting sub entity, which is also going to be that alignment, and then the ending sub entity, which is going to be the alignment on the other end of that turn. And then I can specify a new point that I want it to target. So I can click maybe right there, hit enter. And sometimes it'll clear the bow tie and it'll give you a much cleaner looking corner there. Sometimes it'll do nothing. Sometimes it'll, output something really, really funky. I tend not to waste the time on clearing the bow ties. But at the corners here, you might have to do some editing to your surface that you extrapolate from your corridors in order to get those corners to look the way that they should. But this corner will probably turn out pretty clean. Where the bow ties are, it maybe will be, not so clean. So that's just kind of some of the quirks that come with working with intersections and corridors that haven't, quite been able to figure out exactly myself. I'm going to go ahead and freeze those alignments again. As you can see up here on this intersection here, there's a bow tie on each one of these corners. Sometimes that clear bow ties works, sometimes it doesn't. I usually don't waste the time to spend the time doing that. Okay, but once you've changed the targets and edited the target mapping for each one of your regions for your intersection is pretty much done. As you can see here from these blue lines, it's going to maintain this crown here in the middle and then kind of, taper off and include the crown for the rest of the corridor on both roads. If you go ahead and select your corridor and then hit corridor surface, I'm going to delete this one that's already in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit this little button right here to create a new corridor surface. And then I'm going to specify top as the code, hit apply. And then it's going to generate a surface for me. Doesn't have the correct style on it. I'm just going to go ahead and change the style to the CVLX PG style, just so you can see the contours. And then I'm going to freeze the corridor so that we can look at the surface. So as you can see here, it does a pretty good job modeling this intersection. It's doing a little bit of funky things with the elevation right here in the middle. That's completely normal, but you can probably just delete these extra contours that are there. This is our proposed or preliminary elevation that we wanted here at the intersection of 870, and then the profile is probably just slightly off because this is the 870 contour here. If I hover over, you can see the elevation is 870. Is not quite in the middle, but it's pretty close. And then as you can see here at the corners, even though there was those bow ties, it still does a decent job of kind of tying in the contours. You might have to edit and change things as needed, but see up here where there was no bow tie, it does a pretty good job of just, following or interpolating and outputting a good surface for you. And then, like I was saying, those kind of weird funky regions, which were right here and right here, along sort of the greater than 90 degree angle turns, didn't really result in anything weird in the surface. And again, the surface is kind of the final output that we want from our corridor. Thus, it's not necessary to edit the target mapping for those sections, which is why I didn't cover it in this video. And then as you can see up here where there were bow ties, it still turned out, pretty normal. You might do some fine grading to edit and change things later on, but again, that's just kind of the next step following your corridor. The corridor does the vast majority of the work for you, as you can see. So yeah, now we have our intersection created, and it went ahead and spit out a surface including this intersection, and it's all in one corridor, so you don't have to create a corridor surface for this road here, and then another corridor surface for this road here, and then tie in the contours together at the intersection, and then have another corridor for here, which you have to extract another surface, and then you're tying together, for this project where we'd have a corridor for this road, for this road, for this road, for this road. You'd have 1, 2, 3, 4. You'd have 5 different corridors, which you'd have to extract a surface and then tie all together. When you create your corridor all as one thing and then use the intersections, obviously where the roads intersect, you can just extract one surface, which is this surface here, which will vastly expedite your grading. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that just because we're not going to keep that for now. That's going to expedite the grading plan, and it's just going to make maximal use of the corridor itself. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the corridor back on just one more time so we can take one final look at it. Again, the corridors are going to look kind of funky. You're going to get some weird outputs sometimes. You're going to have these weird bow ties. Sometimes it might not connect exactly, but if you edit your target mapping and do it the way that it should be, if we take a look at this intersection, this one's really, really clean. There's no bow ties here on the corners, and then obviously it ties in together between these two roads quite nicely. The grading here from our surface is really, really well done from the corridor itself. So it's quite a tedious task, but once you do it and you have one corridor which you can extract one surface from, it makes working with corridors, especially in larger subdivisions with multiple roads, much, 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 much easier. Thanks, guys.